David met Bailey in the most intoxicating way, an encounter that felt like fate wrapped in silk and fire. It was a stormy autumn afternoon on campus, the kind where the air smelled of rain and earth. The sky bruised with thick clouds. He had just left the library, preoccupied with cybersecurity theories, when she crashed into him, a whirlwind of dark curls and red lips, sending her steaming caramel macchiato all over his laptop bag. She gasped, eyes widening, lips parting in a way that made his breath hitch. "Shit, sorry. I wasn't watching where I was going," she said, voice smooth as honey, laced with a teasing undertone. Before he could react, she dabbed at his shirt with delicate fingers, her touch electric, lingering just a second too long. The scent of vanilla and something dangerously sweet surrounded him. He should have been irritated, but instead, he was captivated. Bailey wasn't just beautiful, she exuded confidence. A kind of effortless allure that made men forget themselves. "Let me make it up to you," she purred, her emerald eyes locking onto his, daring him to resist. That was the beginning. That night, over whiskey and stolen glances, David fell. Hard. Bailey had a way of making David forget the world. From a moment they started dating, their nights turned into a blur of passion. Whispered confessions and tangled sheets. She was intoxicating, unpredictable, and utterly addictive. Their chemistry was undeniable. Her touch sent jolts of pleasure through him. Her lips ignited fires he never wanted to put out. In the beginning, she was everything he had ever dreamed of, a woman who made love feel like an adventure rather than a routine. Mornings were slow and sultry. Bailey would stretch against him, her body warm and pliant, teasing him with lazy kisses before pulling away with a smirk, making him chase her under the covers. She thrived on anticipation, on teasing him until he was desperate for her. She'd straddle him, biting her lower lip, whispering wicked things before finally giving in. And when she did, when she let herself go, completely unraveling in his arms, he felt like the luckiest man alive. But it wasn't just sex. She had a way of making him feel like the center of her universe. The way she'd listen intently, her fingers tracing his jawline as he spoke. The way she'd pull him into spontaneous adventures, midnight road trips, impulsive skinny dipping, unexpected weekends in bed. She was a storm he never wanted to escape. Yet beneath the surface, cracks were beginning to form. Small things at first, missed dates, secretive texts, nights when she came home smelling of expensive cologne that wasn't his. David ignored the warning signs, convincing himself that Bailey was just wild and free-spirited. But deep down, a quiet unease was creeping in, whispering truths he wasn't ready to face. And for now, he drowned them out with the taste of her lips. David had always considered himself an observant man, someone who could read between the lines, catch the unspoken words in a conversation. But when it came to Bailey, his instincts dulled, clouded by the way she could pull him in with just a glance, a touch, a whispered promise against his ear. Maybe that's why he ignored the first signs, the subtle shifts in her behavior that should have set off alarms. At first, it was easy to brush off. She'd cancel plans last minute, flashing him that irresistible, apologetic smile, murmuring something about a work commitment or a last-minute obligation. He wanted to believe her. The biggest red flag came one night when she came home late, her hair slightly tousled, lips smudged like she had been kissed, just not by him. She smelled different. A mix of perfume and something darker, something musky. David had pulled her close, inhaling deeply, trying to convince himself that he was imagining it. But the way she tensed, the way her hands smoothed down his chest instead of wrapping around his neck like they usually did, sent a cold wave of doubt through him. "You're late," he murmured, his voice carefully neutral. "Ugh, Robert kept me out way too long." "You know how he is," she said with an exaggerated eye roll, tossing her purse onto the counter. She kissed him then, slow and deep, tried to erase the questions in his mind. And like a fool, he let her, because Bailey knew exactly how to make him forget, how to keep him tangled in her web. But for how much longer? Number 4. Write more smoothly and creatively. Chat da noi. David had always been the kind of man who believed in loyalty, in commitment, in the unspoken contract between two people who had chosen each other. So when Bailey curled up next to him on the couch that night, her bare legs draped lazily over his lap, he let himself believe, just for a moment, that things were still good between them. The flickering candlelight cast soft shadows on her skin, her delicate fingers tracing slow, absent-minded circles against his wrist as she scrolled through her phone. She looked beautiful, effortless. And yet, something was off. She had been distant lately, always finding a reason to be somewhere else. But tonight, she was here, stretched across him like she used to be, and it made his pulse slow just a little. Her touch was feather-light as she set her phone aside and leaned into him, pressing her lips to his jaw, then his neck, slow and sweet, the way she always did when she wanted something. David slid his hands along her thighs, savoring the way she shivered beneath his touch. For a brief moment, he let himself get lost in it. The feel of her, the taste of her, the way she sighed into his mouth when he deepened a kiss. But then his fingers brushed the silky fabric of her dress. Something unfamiliar, something new, a dress he had never seen before. He pulled back slightly, studying her. New dress? He asked casually, though something in his chest tightened. Bailey hesitated for a split second, then smiled, running her fingers through his hair. Yeah, I picked it up last week. A lie. He knew it now, because Bailey never bought new dresses for him. The first time David truly felt the distance between them was in their bedroom, a place that had once been their sanctuary. The soft glow of the bedside lamp barely illuminated the space as Bailey stood in front of the mirror, applying a final layer of gloss to her already perfect lips. She looked stunning, effortlessly seductive in a way that had always driven him insane. But something was missing. Him. She barely spared him a glance as she adjusted the hem of her black dress, shorter than usual, hugging her curves in ways that made his fingers itch to claim her. But he knew better now. This wasn't for him. Where are you going? He asked, keeping his voice even. Bailey sighed, smoothing her hands over her hips as if she hadn't even heard him. Just out with Robert and some of the others. You know, a little midweek fun. Midweek fun. That was new. That was his night with her. David pushed himself up from the bed, walking up behind her, close enough that he could feel the heat of her skin. His hands slid over her waist, slow, deliberate, his lips brushing against the curve of her neck. She shivered, but didn't lean into him the way she used to. You could stay, he murmured, voice low, teasing, the way that had always made her melt before. He slid a hand lower, feeling the familiar dip of her stomach, the soft curve of her thigh. Bailey let out a breath, but instead of turning toward him, she gently peeled his hand away. Not tonight, babe, she said softly, pressing a quick kiss to his cheek, already pulling away. And just like that, she was gone. And David was left in the silence, drowning in the unmistakable feeling of being replaced. David had always been the kind of man who noticed details. The way Bailey used to smile with her whole body when she was excited. The way she'd absently play with the hem of his shirt when she curled up beside him on the couch. But lately, those details had changed. She was distant, her mind elsewhere, her body in the same room, but unreachable. At first, he had chalked it up to stress. Work had been demanding for both of them, and life could be exhausting. But now, staring at the bank statements spread out on his desk, his chest tightened with something far colder than simple suspicion. Dinners at places they'd never been together. Hotel reservations under her name. Luxurious purchases he hadn't made for her. His jaw clenched as he scrolled through the unfamiliar transactions. The puzzle pieces clicking into place with sickening clarity. His stomach twisted as he checked the timestamps. Charges at times when she had told him she was at the gym, out with Robert, visiting her parents. It wasn't just a feeling anymore. This was proof. A slow exhale left him as he pushed away from the desk, his hands flexing at his sides. He felt strangely calm, as if his mind had already accepted what his heart was still catching up to. The woman he had spent years loving, supporting, worshipping, she had betrayed him. And worse, she hadn't even been careful about it. David's lips curled into something that wasn't quite a smile, wasn't quite anger. You think you're clever, Bailey? He thought, shaking his head. Fine. If this was how she wanted to play, he'd play. But he wouldn't be the one left broken when it was over. Bandanoi? Based on the above summary, write a 300-word paragraph for idea number 7. Write more smoothly and creatively. Chat danoi? David had always prided himself on being composed, the type of man who thought before he acted, who measured twice before he cut. But as he sat in his truck outside the dimly lit hotel parking lot, watching Bailey step out of a sleek black car that wasn't hers, a fire he hadn't felt in years ignited deep in his chest. She looked effortlessly seductive, wrapped in a short, dark dress that hugged every curve, her legs crossing gracefully as she stood under the glowing neon sign of the entrance. David knew that dress. He remembered the night she'd bought it, claimed it was for their anniversary, an anniversary she had conveniently forgotten when the time had come. Now he knew exactly who she had been saving it for. The man behind the wheel, Lucas. David had seen his face before, the personal trainer from her gym. The one she spoke about just enough to be casual, but never enough to be convincing. A smug bastard with broad shoulders and the arrogant ease of a man who took what he wanted without asking. Bailey leaned into the car, her hand brushing Lucas's forearm before she whispered something that made him grin. Then, without hesitation, she turned and walked into the hotel, hips swaying with practiced seduction. David's hands clenched around the steering wheel. His instincts screamed at him to storm inside, to expose them, to watch the blood drain from Bailey's face as she realized her game was up. But he didn't. Instead, he exhaled slow and steady. No, Bailey wanted to play games? Then he would let her. But he wouldn't just confront her. He would dismantle her, piece by piece, brick by brick. And when he was done, there wouldn't be anything left for her to stand on. Bailey sat across from David at the dining table, her hands wrapped around a delicate wine glass, though she barely sipped from it. The air between them was thick, the kind of silence that wasn't empty, but waiting, charged, electric, inevitable. David had seen her nervous before, had watched her try to mask guilt with sweetness, but this was something different. She could sense it, the shift in power, the unraveling of the illusion she had worked so hard to maintain. "You've been distant," she murmured, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. The move was calculated, designed to make her look vulnerable, softer. David leaned back in his chair, fingers tracing the rim of his own glass. "Have I?" His voice was smooth, unreadable. "Funny. I was about to say the same about you." Bailey hesitated, eyes flicking up to his. He could see her mind working, the gears turning as she tried to find the right angle. He let her squirm for a moment before he reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone, laying it on the table between them. One tap of the screen, and the video played. The footage was crisp. Bailey, in that short black dress, stepping out of a car that wasn't hers, walking into a hotel with Lucas following close behind, her fingers tightening around his arm, her lips brushing against his ear, her breath caught audibly. "David." "No," he interrupted, his tone calm, even. "No excuses. No lies. I know everything, Bailey." She blinked rapidly, panic blooming across her face. She wasn't prepared for this, wasn't ready for the house of cards to come tumbling down so quickly. David leaned in, smiling slightly. "Now tell me, how exactly were you planning to spin this one?" Bailey's face paled, her breath coming shallow as she fumbled for words. The usual charm, the soft pout she used to manipulate her way out of trouble, failed her now. The truth lay between them, undeniable, a fracture that couldn't be repaired with whispered apologies or false promises. David didn't move, didn't blink. He let the silence stretch, let her feel the weight of everything she had thrown away. Finally, she swallowed, straightened her back, and tried to regain control. "It wasn't, David, I was lost. You've been so distant. I didn't mean for this to happen." He chuckled, but there was no warmth in it. "Didn't mean for it to happen? That's funny because it looks pretty intentional to me." He tapped the screen again, and another video played. Her in Lucas's lap, her lips on his neck, fingers tangled in his hair. I guess this was just a misunderstanding. Tears welled in her eyes, but David saw through them. She wasn't crying for him. She was crying for herself, for what she was about to lose. "I can fix this," she pleaded, reaching for his hand, but he pulled away. "You can't fix something that's already shattered," he said, standing. "But don't worry, Bailey. You'll have plenty of time to think about it." As he walked away, he didn't look back. Let her sit there in the wreckage she created. He was done, and for the first time in years, he felt free. David stepped out into the night, inhaling the crisp air like it was the first real breath he'd taken in years. The weight that had suffocated him for so long, Bailey's lies, her manipulation, the slow erosion of their love, was gone. The night hummed with a strange kind of peace, not the sharp sting of heartbreak, but the steady realization of freedom. His phone buzzed in his pocket, another message from Bailey. Probably another desperate plea, another excuse wrapped in sugar-coated regret. He didn't even glance at the screen before deleting it. Let her sit in the ruin she created. He had no reason to stay tethered to a past that had only drained him. Sliding into his car, the familiar hum of the engine beneath his fingers, he felt something shift inside him. Not just anger or betrayal, but something deeper, a rebirth. He wasn't the man she had walked all over anymore. He was stronger, wiser. And tomorrow? Tomorrow, he would wake up with nothing left to lose. And that was the most powerful thing of all. With a final glance in the rearview mirror, David drove forward, leaving the past where it belonged, far, far behind him. Life often teaches us that not every love story is meant to last, and not every person who walks into our life deserves a permanent place in it. David's journey is a reminder to trust your instincts, value your self-worth, and recognize when a relationship is doing more harm than good. In today's world, where social media glorifies toxic behaviors and instant gratification, it's crucial to build relationships based on mutual respect, trust, and effort. If someone continuously takes from you without giving back, don't be afraid to walk away. Sometimes the best thing you can do for yourself is let go and move forward.